The drama surrounding the world of mixed martial arts is never confined to the cage. Beyond the fists, the kicks, and the grappling, there exists another battlefield, one made of words, interviews, and heated exchanges that shape rivalries before a single punch is ever thrown. This week, the spotlight fell on some of the sport's most recognizable names, with tensions rising, accusations flying, and unexpected revelations turning routine interviews into viral moments. Alexander Volkanovski, the reigning featherweight champion known for his composure, suddenly broke character. On the unscripted show, he unleashed a verbal barrage aimed directly at Colby Covington, the welterweight star infamous for his trash talk and controversial antics. Volkanovski's voice carried the weight of genuine anger, not the typical rehearsed soundbite fighters often deliver to sell a fight. He called Covington a piece of samanordchen and made it abundantly clear that his contempt wasn't for show. He dared Colby to say those things to his face, warning that he would happily slap him if the opportunity ever arose. This wasn't promotional theater, it was raw frustration spilling into the open. For a fighter as disciplined and respectful as Volkanovski, the outburst highlighted just how far Covington had pushed the boundaries of acceptable behavior. Volkanovski explained that in his experience, most fighters are among the most disciplined, respectful, and honorable people he's ever met. Yet time and again, it seems the loudest voices, the provocateurs like Covington, steal the spotlight. The Australian champion recalled how Covington once hid behind cameras, mocking Paddy Pimblett, yet conveniently stayed silent when Pimblett confronted him off camera. It was a pattern that mirrored Covington's infamous clash with Jorge Masvidal, an exchange that spilled from the octagon into the streets, where Masvidal physically confronted him after Covington crossed personal lines, even targeting family members. Volkanovski's rant served as both a personal statement and a broader commentary on the blurred line between entertainment and disrespect in modern MMA. He made it clear, there is a difference between hyping a fight and becoming a piece of work who poisons the sport. But Volkanovski's words were just one chapter in a week overflowing with storylines. Colby Covington himself stepped into the headlines for an entirely different reason, offering his prediction on Islam Makhachev's welterweight title bout against Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 322. Speaking with Helen Yee, Covington, who thrives on controversy, took a surprisingly measured approach. He admitted that Makhachev would be the favorite, given his wrestling pedigree and control, but he also highlighted Jack's striking prowess and the unpredictable nature of MMA. While Covington leaned toward Makhachev due to his grappling advantage, he cautioned fans not to underestimate the punching power and sharp boxing of the Australian contender. In true Covington fashion, even when making an analytical point, he couldn't resist framing himself as the authoritative voice of fight IQ. His words carried the arrogance of a man who has long convinced himself that he remains central to every UFC conversation, even if he isn't the one stepping into the cage. Elsewhere in the fight world, Justin Gaethje, known for his wild style and destructive power, shared a story from his teenage years that raised eyebrows. In a reflective moment, Gaethje recalled being just 18 years old, still wrestling in college, when he encountered none other than Georges St-Pierre, the legendary UFC champion. To the astonishment of those listening, Gaethje claimed that he actually took GSP down during a training session. While he admitted he was in awe of St-Pierre at the time, his recollection served as a reminder of just how naturally gifted he was in wrestling. For Gaethje, the experience was more than just a casual training memory. It was the spark that cemented his dream of becoming a fighter. Sitting in Buffalo Wild Wings, watching UFC cards for hours with friends, the young wrestler made up his mind that he belonged in that world. Years later, his wars inside the octagon would prove him right. Not all fighters, however, are viewed with the same credibility. Michael Bisping, the outspoken former champion turned commentator, didn't hold back when asked about Dillon Danis and his aspirations to enter the UFC. Bisping's response was brutally dismissive. While Danis may have an undefeated record in Bellator, Bisping argued that he hadn't faced any legitimate competition. He described Danis's bravado as little more than noise, a marketing gimmick rather than a reflection of true fighting ability. Bisping even indulged in a bit of fantasy matchmaking, suggesting that Danis should immediately be thrown in against someone like Kevin Holland, Ian Gary, or Kamaru Usman, fighters who, in his eyes, would tear him apart. His blunt conclusion was clear. If Dillon Danis truly believes his own hype, throw him into the UFC Shark Tank and watch reality expose him. Meanwhile, Mauricio Rufy prepared for a very different kind of pressure. Scheduled to fight Benoit Saint-Denis in Paris, Rufy acknowledged the challenge of entering enemy territory. The French crowd would be deafening, every chant and cheer aimed against him. Yet instead of being intimidated, Rufy flipped the narrative. He argued that all the pressure would actually fall on Saint-Denis, who carried the weight of expectation in front of his countrymen. Rufy recalled similar experiences, including fighting in Rio de Janeiro, where he faced hostile local crowds. To him, hostility is just background noise. He framed pressure as a privilege, a sign that something meaningful was at stake, and vowed to silence the arena by putting on a show. Saint-Denis, for his part, embraced the moment. Fighting at home in Paris was a dream come true, a chance to showcase his growth since UFC events were first legalized in France. He admitted that early in his career, media obligations and the stress of representing his country had been overwhelming. But now, hardened by experience, he welcomed the challenge, framing pressure not as a burden, but as fuel. For him, fighting in Paris wasn't a risk, it was an honor. The week also brought a revelation from Mackenzie Dern, who found out she was fighting for the vacant strawweight title not through a phone call or a meeting with UFC executives, but through Instagram. Dana White's announcement blindsided her, leaving Dern scrambling to confirm with her team whether the fight was indeed for the real belt or just an interim one. The surprise only added to the surreal nature of her journey, with the sudden realization that she was on the cusp of fulfilling a lifelong dream. It was a reminder of how unpredictable the fight business can be, where life-changing news sometimes arrives not from the UFC office, but from social media. Paul Craig, another veteran of the sport, expressed his own urgency as he looked ahead to his fight with Modestas Bukauskas. With only one win in his last 7 outings, Craig acknowledged that his career was at a crossroads. He spoke passionately about his desire to finish the fight, preferably by knockout, something he had never achieved in the UFC, despite his reputation as a submission artist. His words were tinged with desperation, but also defiance. For Craig, this wasn't just another fight, it was a potential turning point, a chance to remind fans and himself why he belonged in the octagon. Amidst all the talk of fights, titles, and rivalries, a different kind of feud spilled over into the headlines. Rampage Jackson, the former UFC champion, publicly blasted MMA Guru, a content creator who had criticized him during a live stream. Rampage accused him of opening the door to defamation by discussing his past, a threat that hinted at potential legal action. But MMA Guru was quick to fire back on social media, dismissing Rampage's claims and expressing disappointment that the former champion hadn't simply challenged him to a fight instead. For Guru, Rampage's threat of lawsuits felt beneath the reputation of a fighter he had once admired. It was a surreal clash between a legendary fighter and an online commentator, a collision of two very different worlds within the fight community. And yet, even as these side stories unfolded, it was Volkanovski's explosive comments about Covington that resonated the loudest. In a sport where fighters often blur the line between showmanship and sincerity, his anger felt unfiltered, raw, and entirely real. He didn't just criticize Covington's words, he criticized the culture that allows men like him to thrive on provocation, while others embody respect and discipline. For Volkanovski, it wasn't about selling a fight, it was about drawing a line in the sand and saying enough is enough. This week in MMA was a reminder of the sport's dual nature. Inside the cage, it is about skill, strategy, and survival. Outside of it, it becomes a theater of personalities, egos, and clashes that shape narratives as much as the fights themselves. From Gaethje's nostalgic tale of wrestling with greatness, to Bisping's cutting assessment of Danis, to Rampage's bizarre war of words with an internet critic, every story added a layer to the drama that makes mixed martial arts one of the most unpredictable spectacles in the world. The final word, however, belongs to the audience. Do you think Volkanovski was right to call out Colby Covington so harshly? Or did he let Covington's antics get under his skin? Will Dillon Danis ever prove his worth inside the UFC? Or is he doomed to remain a sideshow? And what about Justin Gaethje's claim of taking down Georges St-Pierre? Do you believe it, or was it just a young fighter's memory stretched over time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the ever-unfolding drama of MMA.